but not new money for pay. And yet we've had former NHS workers tell us that one of the reasons they left was below inflation pay rises. I just wanted to ask you, do you accept that pay hits morale in the NHS?
And Anushka, look, you asked about pay. Look, of course, would everyone like to be paid more? Of course they would be. But I think everyone also recognises the economic context that we're in. And our job in government is to balance all those things, make sure that we reward people fairly and well for the incredible work they're doing, particularly our NHS workers, but also make sure that we're doing things that are good for them and the rest of the country in the long term, and that means bringing down inflation.
It's absolutely shameless. The Prime Minister doubling down again today on the government's claim that giving our nurses and doctors and teachers anything more than a crappy real terms pay cut will embed and drive inflation. It's a claim that's been completely rubbished by most expert economists. In fact, to use the Prime Minister's own words, the claim is
complete economic illiteracy.
What the Prime Minister is saying is that our teachers, our nurses, our doctors and other public sector workers who kept this country going during the pandemic, who've already suffered more than a decade of crappy real terms pay cuts, must accept yet another crappy real terms pay cut so the government can bring down inflation. It's completely untrue, and the Prime Minister knows it. It's just an outrageous scam which is being perpetrated by the government against public sector workers. How many times do I have to point it out? It's not rocket science. If a private company increases its wages, yes, that goes directly into the cost of making that product or service, and that might end up increasing the price. But that's not the case with public sector workers such as education and healthcare, which are free at the point of use. That means consumers don't pay for them directly, so they don't affect the inflation statistics. Don't just take my word for this. Listen to Stephanie Flanders, an expert economist and head of Bloomberg News Economics, speaking to the BBC's Laura Kunsberg on April 16th.
They're concerned that inflation, which we know is putting so much pressure on people, will be bumped further up if they hand over lots more money to the public sector. As a very expert economist, does that stack up?
It is not something that economists tend to agree with, I'm sorry, because it is very different. If you have a private sector company increase its wages, well, that goes directly into the cost of making that product or service and may well then end up meaning they have to increase the price in the shops. Obviously, that's not the case with public sector workers. There isn't a price that's going to go up.
And let's not forget that according to the International Monetary Fund, it was rising corporate profits which were the largest contributor to Europe's inflation over the past 2 years, as companies increased prices by more than the spiking costs of imported energy. So just when the Prime Minister should be targeting corporate greed, his shameless government wants the public to believe giving nurses and teachers a slightly higher than usual crappy real terms pay cut would drive and embed high inflation. Using the Prime Minister's own words again, that argument is
complete economic illiteracy.